Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. Each week, this podcast will take you inside our unfiltered thoughts on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. This week, we talk about yet another new signing, with winger Pedro Neto joining from Wolves and taking our summer spending up to almost £200 million. We reflect on yet another injury for Reece James and what we learned from our final pre-season game against Inter Milan. Let's start with a voice note from Joe on that game at the Bridge.
So, fresh off the Chelsea versus Inter Milan friendly at Stamford Bridge, I don't know what anyone else thought, but personally I thought it was encouraging. I know we didn't end up winning the game, and it took a 99th minute equaliser to get us a draw. But I think overall, our performance, particularly in the second half, there were moments in the first half as well, but the second half was a much more sort of pleasing affair. I think that when you saw the likes of Palmer and Kunku come on, and Casado in the midfield too, I think it kind of added a bit of bite and a bit more, obviously, flair and skill, as you'd imagine. And Gusto was busy all day long. I think he was probably one of the standout contenders for man of the match. He was always looking to get forward, which was, unusual. We sort of seen him in this sort of inverted role. He didn't seem to be inverted today. I thought he was very, very high, as was Cucurella in the first half. It seemed to be that when we had possession of the ball, we were leaving Colwill and Fofana to mark, and both fullbacks were bombing on. I didn't see much inverting today, personally. It seemed to, I think if we did see any of that, it was Cucurella sort of slipping into sort of left centre-back, but he only really seemed to do that quite early on in the first half. And then sort of by maybe 10 or 15 minutes, he was basically bombing on too. And no more so than when we sort of created one of our chances in the first half where Gusto went down the right-hand side. He played a 1-2 with Madueke and he whipped a ball in, a beautiful cross, which went all the way out to the other side. And then it was Cucurella who whacked in the cross from the left-hand side. And it was really weird because, Mudryk had the ball multiple times before that in that same area, and he just refuses to cross the ball. He just continually keeps coming inside and looking for almost the perfect pass. I think once he realises, or if he gets the chance to realise, that he can just either take a player on or even just get the ball, a bit like Beckham used to do, just stand it up and whip it in, he's going to be a real asset for hopefully us. But the way he's going, he might get a loan or a transfer, because he doesn't seem to be picking up the easier stuff, or what you would class as the most logical stuff from a winger, very quickly. That being said, just while I stay on Mudryk, I thought he grew into the game. I thought his first half was reasonably poor, but as the second half progressed, he seemed to be the one that was finding a blue shirt. He did a lot of waiting around. He held onto the ball a few times, I thought, for too long at times, and then he picked out a good little pass, and actually we created 2 or 3 chances off the back of it. So a bit of credit where it's due with Mudryk. I don't want to slam players when they don't deserve it. I think he was sort of 6.5, 7 out of 10 today. I think and mainly that was all from his second half performance. Obviously he created the goal, created the chance for Colwill when obviously he hits the post. And he also put a great little ball in from Kunku when he's basically mishit it in the second half. So there were bright spots from him, but again, a little bit just too few and far between. I think the one shining light I saw from Mudryk was just before he got substituted, when he, for some reason, from out of nowhere, picked the ball up probably just inside Inter Milan's half, and he sprinted at the fullback, roasted the fullback, took him on, bit of skill, and he just ran out of room before getting the cross in. But you're thinking to yourself, the fullback hated it. You could see in his face afterwards, thinking, oh, thank God he's gone off. That's the sort of thing he needs to understand, that once he works that out, he's going to be fantastic. But just quickly going back to Gusto and Cucurella, I thought in the first half they were dangerous. They seemed match ready. I think they are the 2 match ready players that I've seen by a distance, actually. They seem ready to go. No drop off from the Euros from Cucurella. If anything, I thought it looked even better. Now, again, it's only a friendly. It's not a league game, but I think it just spells all sorts of problems for Ben Chilwell when you pin the guy that's been on tour for 3 or 4 weeks, and then the guy that's been playing at the Euros and hasn't kicked a ball in anger for Chelsea is the first player on the team sheet against Inter Milan at home. So I think the writing could easily be on the wall for Chilwell. And once again, Gusto in the second half, he just seemed to be a thorn in Inter Milan's side. He pops up everywhere, it seems, on our right-hand side, sort of either deep lying, receiving the ball from fullbacks, from the centre-backs, or say Enzo, or he was the furthest man forward in that high sort of pinched area of the field by the corner flag. He was just basically covering so much ground, and the amount of minutes him, Enzo, and Lavia played sort of makes you think that they're probably a shoo-in for a start against Man City at the weekend.
Hey, it's Chris here with a really quick message. Check us out on Instagram at 1905podcast. You'll find video clips, photos, and much more about everything we discuss on the show. Plus, it's a great way to get in touch to tell us your thoughts, share your feedback, or just say hi. Follow us on Instagram at 1905podcast. And now, back to the show.
I think Madueke was a slight disappointment. He didn't seem to do much. He was doing a bit like what Mudryk was doing as well. He was sort of holding the ball up, sort of waiting for the defender to commit, and the defender never committed ever. And then they'd get two or three sort of other players back, and then before you knew it, you had this sort of wall of Inter Milan defenders sort of in the way, and he would have to pass backwards and sideways, and it was all kind of a little bit Mudryk-esque from the right-hand side. And I think he had one half run where he sort of took somebody on in the first half, and it nearly resulted in a goal. But other than that, he was probably quite a disappointment. As for Mark Zhu, I thought he was really good. I thought he was a real thorn in Inter Milan's side all afternoon. He gave them no let up. He was always at them. He didn't seem to be overawed by the situation, getting stuck into the goalkeeper and the centre backs. He was a bit unlucky actually in the first half. He won a header sort of on the halfway line, knocked it on for himself, and we were away, and the referee called back for a foul, which I didn't think was a foul at all actually, but I think the referee thought he led with his arm, but they both had their arm up and there was no contact made. But he's a pre-season friendly, and those sort of things get given, don't they? But he was certainly a shining light. I thought he was a real, say, thorn in Inter Milan's side most of the afternoon. So yeah, he was a good plus. As for Inter Milan's goal, I mean, it was a bit worrying. I mean, obviously the guy Bisuk, he came out from sort of the fullback position, sort of dribbled into our midfield. He didn't really do much, and before you knew it, he was through our defenders. Good pass into the Inter Milan centre forward, and Fofana gets dragged into an area which no centre back should really be going. A little bit of a drop of the shoulder, passes it into Thuram, and Colwell again doesn't even know that Thuram's even moved, and before you knew it, he had one touch and bang, it was in the top corner. I mean, Sanchez couldn't do much about the goal, but I think I would say from a Chelsea perspective, it was a very avoidable goal. It was like two or three passes, and from basically their own half, well inside their own half, and before you knew it, we were 1-0 down. So again, that was against the run of play too, so it was a bit disappointing. Up until then, we sort of defended okay. I thought Colwell and Fofana were better today. I didn't think they were like unbelievable, but there was definitely an improvement. The goal was a bit worrying though. I didn't think we defended that at all well, but I think we limited them to maybe one or two half chances overall in the whole game. So I think it's definitely a plus point from what we've seen in the previous games. It was nice to see Nkunku and Palmer almost immediately start linking up. You saw it sort of in the warm-up before the second half got going. They were sort of passing to each other and sort of running off the ball. And it started straight away, and Palmer found Nkunku, then Nkunku found Palmer, and they seemed to be looking out for one another, which is, you know, a great sign. And obviously Nkunku's overhead kick, which was well saved by Sommer, it just gave everyone that sort of little lift and that bit of excitement. But I thought sort of the players that came on did give us a bit of a lift. Caicedo too. I thought Ugochukwu was excellent when he came on. He was full of life. He came on a little bit towards the end, and it sort of, maybe the Inter were sort of getting a little bit leggy by that point, but he still, you know, had a point to prove, and he was winning all of his tackles and putting himself about, and obviously he got his goal, which was really well taken towards the end, which we thoroughly deserved, by the way. It was a definite, would have been a shame if we hadn't got a draw there, because I think Inter Milan didn't deserve to win the game. You know, overall, it was definitely a Chelsea performance that was worthy of a win. He played at the minimum a draw. But I thought, you know, Mudryk did improve. Like I said, he certainly had a few interesting moments in the second half, which sort of made you think, okay, well, maybe he's been left on for 75 minutes. Is there a reason why he's playing that long? Is he you can look at it both ways. Is he trying to get him alone by playing him more? Are they trying to just play him into form? Who knows? I thought Sterling, when he came on for 15 minutes, he certainly was excellent. He was driving at defenders all the time he was on, and he, it was his run that obviously created the free kick for Ugochukwu to score. So I think Sterling deserves a bit of credit. Actually, he's been knocked by a few people, and I think he's come back really strong this pre-season when he could have put his head down and just decided to take his money, but he hasn't done that. And I think we should be very sort of pleased that he hasn't. And I think overall we sort of won the midfield in the second half, and I think that kind of was a big plus point. I think we weren't getting beaten in midfield in the first half necessarily, but we were certainly, I'd say, a little less robust. I thought Dewsbury Hall wasn't quite at it. He got himself in the box a few times, but didn't have a great first half. Hard to do anything in 45 minutes, of course. But overall, the midfield was much better in the second half, and I think we were putting in a few more tackles, which we hadn't done in the first period, and none more so than Lavia inside the first minute in the second half. He went snapping into somebody, and it sort of then gave Caicedo the license to go and do it. And then I think we saw Ugochukwu come on, and he started putting his foot about, and it was like, okay, this is a bit more like a proper game now, which was good. I think one area of concern, which we're going to have to get used to for Chelsea, is the back four. If you watch them play in real time, you see that they're so narrow. So this back four in the second half, it was Vega, Fofana, Colwill and Gusto. We were really, really narrow. So you saw when the fullback DeMarco went through and Sanchez made a really good save in the second half, it was basically a ball kicked out to Gusto's area. The header was flicked on, I think, by Thuram, and DeMarco is just literally in acres of space. There's nobody near him. And that's an area I think will get targeted. It's not a problem if you're going down the other end of the field and scoring loads of goals, but if you don't take any chances, you continue to play that way and you're really narrow and the wingers aren't chasing back the opposition's fullbacks, then that's where you're going to find maybe an area where we're going to be not cut open time and time again, but good teams will exploit those areas, and it won't be long before you're found out there. So it might be something we need to look at. But I think overall, I was pretty happy with the draw. We deserved the win, I think, on the day, like I said. But I think, all being well, we go into the Man City game with a bit of a positive step.
So as you know, we love to have a guest note on the pod. And this week's guest note is a fellow Chelsea season ticket holder and the best striker that I've ever played with. We played together for a number of years at Sunday League level, and Lee Morgan was incredible. Lee was actually on Chelsea's academy as a young lad, as a boy, and I thought it would be no one better to give his perspective on a Chelsea striker that we've not seen in pre-season yet, Nicholas Jackson. He divided a lot of people last season at the club, but I wanted Lee's perspective on how important he thought he could be this season. Over to you, Lee.
Thanks for the introduction, boys. Thanks for having us on. So, Nicholas Jackson. I think he is a very good striker. Don't get me wrong, he's missed probably more than he's scored, a lot more than he's scored. 14 goals in 35 games for your first season as a striker at Chelsea, which is probably the hardest club to play as a striker. He's had a good season under his belt. He's not had the best service and maybe not trusted him as much, but listen, if you're getting into those positions, I know you're missing, but you're getting into the positions, which is the biggest part of the game, then I think it will come. He's good in the air, he's strong, he can actually play on the ground, he's good at dribbling, holding the ball. He likes to come off the left, which is probably his strongest position, but I would say, I think next year he's got to be the main man. He's got to be the vocal point up the top and try and get the boys around him finding him a bit more. Palmer does anyway, but Madueke, I think he's the biggest key to this because he's showed good signs in pre-season. If he could find him a bit more. I mean, we struggle with that, never put crosses in. I think Nicholas Jackson would be great if we can just get the ball into the box, get him, he's good in the air. I really, really like him, guys.
I just finished work and I was just coming home, and I could see on my card the messages were flying through, and I was like, oh, what are they all getting themselves excited about? Literally thinking perhaps we've sold someone at last, and no, we signed bloody Neto. So yeah, my initial reaction was, oh, fantastic, we've actually signed a proper player, which is nice. And my only concern is, where are they going to play? I just don't know where they're all going to fit in. Well, it's not my decision to make, I know, but yeah, mate, he's, from what I recall, he's really two-footed. He goes on the outside, he goes on the inside. And I think that the nice thing is he can play on both sides of the pitch. He's not restricted to one side or the other, which is really nice. Yeah, he's definitely a little bit injury prone, but yeah, he's someone that is really exciting. My gut reaction is, I know that Nkunku and Palmer necessarily don't play in his position, but they still take up a forward role on the pitch. And when you look at Mudryk, Palmer, Nkunku, Noni, Sterling, the list goes on and on and on. And it's like, I'm not too sure where they're all gonna play. So yeah, I mean, really excited. If you can't get excited by someone like that, then football's not worth playing, is it? I mean, it's kind of the reason why we all do it, is that you want to be kind of intrigued by these signings that are particularly well heard of. And I think the moment you start going down the road of everyone's a youngster, I think we've all got a little bit kind of blasé to it. It's a little bit kind of like, oh, it's another youngster. And we signed that goalkeeper in the week for 20 million. No one's ever heard of him. Like, it's a case of, he's fine. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, but it's hard to get excited about players that you've never seen play. And I think Neto obviously clearly doesn't fall into that category. Yeah, really, I mean, a really exciting player for us. And I just think that we can hopefully, if we could land a centre-back before the window shuts, I'd be really happy, really happy. Even if it meant selling somebody that we didn't really want to go. I think if we could out a forward, I say Sterling got sold or something, but it meant we actually brought in a centre-back, I think I'd be really, really pleased. I'm just really concerned that we're not going strong enough in that area. And it's all very well buying all these youngsters and all these forwards, but at some point, you've got to make them fit. And what you don't want is an unhappy camp of players that are basically just getting peed off. They're not getting much game time. So, yeah, I'm sure they've got a plan. I'm sure they're going to work it all out. I'm sure when they sign, they probably ask these questions. Where am I going to play? What's my role in the team? But, yeah, he's actually someone he reminds me a little bit of Jota at Liverpool. He's that type of player, the same sort of physique, obviously skill level and goal scorer, kind of a real sort of bit of a pest, isn't he? Bit of a wasp. He's always at you. He can go both ways. He's really dynamic. And, yeah, he's one of those players that goes a little bit under the radar. I think Liverpool in their heyday, it was always like Salah, Sane and Mane. But, and who was the other guy they had there? Oh, Firmino. But you felt as though when Jota came, he kind of was a little bit like maybe a lower end scale signing, but has actually proven to be a really handy player for Liverpool and a match winner. So yeah, hopefully Neto can be that for us. And again, really dynamic and likes to go at goal and actually score goals. So yeah, really pleased. Good bit of business, that.
Well, that one came out of nowhere, didn't it? Incredible business by Chelsea to do it so quietly these days. It was a bit of a throwback to Colin Hutchinson era, getting a deal done when we get like Hullet and people like that, just so quietly. But yeah, I mean, first reaction, I think, like most Chelsea fans, is just really, really happy with the signing. Pedro Neto, number one, has always played brilliantly against Chelsea. He ruined Christmas for me. Was it 2 years ago when he scored a 95th minute winner when we had under Frank Lampard just before Christmas? And he was brilliant at the Bridge last year when actually Wolves were one of the few teams to beat us at the Bridge last year, weren't they? And they, certainly in the second half of the season, they beat us and he tore us apart, to be fair. And yeah, really, he's the sort of player I think that as a fan you love, because he's super direct, really hard working, good on both feet, can shoot, cross. He's got a bit of everything. So then the negatives. The first one is the injury record. I don't think I realised just how bad his record was until I looked it up, and it quickly got shared around in it. So he's missed 102 games in the last 4 seasons through injury. Over half of them were one season. So I think he basically missed the whole season with a knee injury. But he has a tendency of missing 20, 25 games here and there every season in the last few years, which is obviously a massive concern, particularly given Chelsea's injury record in the last season or two as well. So that will have to be managed. I mean, he'll be on paper under a little less pressure at Chelsea in terms of playing every game. There's a lot of options there for rotation. And there are examples of players having injuries early in their career and actually getting through them and finding a better way to manage their body. An example of that, probably the best one, ironically, someone who left Chelsea and did that would be Ian Robben. So when he was at Chelsea back in the day, he similar really, he'd have like lots of niggles, ankle injuries, hamstring injuries, kind of similar to what Neto's kind of been suffering from. But then by the time he got to Bayern Munich, had really sorted all that out and he was pretty robust from that point forward. So you'd hope Chelsea have got a plan in place for that. He passed his medical last night as I record this. So I'm sure that would have been looked at and they'll have a plan around managing that. But yeah, that's a good one. And the other one is who, as you say, in terms of the balance of the squad, where he fits in. Now, I think I looked this up, he plays on the right and the left. He's played slight majority of his games on the left. He's left-footed. So I think the fact he can play on both sides is really beneficial. Having a direct kind of player on the left-hand side who wants to get outside and put crosses in and pullbacks, I think fits Maresca's system really well. So I'd imagine that's where he will play the majority of his games. The concern that's come out in the last day or so is that the player to make way for him could be Madueke. And to me, based on what we're seeing at the end of last season, obviously, and certainly in pre-season as well, that feels like the absolute worst choice for me. To me, it's a no-brainer that it should be Mudryk, as I said before, who goes out on loan to make way for him. I just think that makes sense for everyone involved. Madueke being linked to Newcastle, one, why would you do it when he has been, outside of Nkunku, certainly as from a winger's point of view, our best attacker in pre-season? And secondly, I just don't think you'd actually get his full value right now. I think his ceiling, Madueke, is potentially pretty high. And I think another good season, even if he did similar to last year, I think you could be asking for kind of Neto style numbers, really. And he's English as well, don't forget. So you've always got an English tax, as we've seen with Spurs and Solanke. I think a good season for Madueke this year. And then if you do need to make room for people like, Esteban Willian and Kendry Pyers next summer, then I think you could be getting 50 million for him. So I just don't think, one, for us this season, it would make any sense for Madueke to be sold. And secondly, in terms of the squad and who we need, who at the moment, I'd have him starting first day. So I'd really hope that those rumours are nothing more but that. And we don't do anything silly there, because I think it would be a real shame at this point of time for Madueke to leave. But yeah, let's see how that plays out. So we have to talk about another injury for Reece James, don't we? It bears a mention, I think, and just so disappointing when I saw the news. I'm sure, like all Chelsea fans, just gutted, really. I mean, hopefully it isn't too bad. That's the first thing to say. Rumours are that he'll miss back around the 14th of September or something like that. So it's not, hopefully, a particularly bad injury. It's more about just managing that hamstring, but just really worrying. I think I was really hopeful after he had the surgery last year that would be, the end of it as much as possible in terms of the injury. We saw it, Kante had it just before he left Chelsea. He ended up, that's why he missed the end of that season, was he had the surgery. And since he has left the club, obviously he's been absolutely fine by all accounts. His injuries have kind of really subsided and he looked brilliant for France in the Euros, didn't he? So I was really hoping that we'd have a similar story with Reece. And maybe we will, but it's not a great start, is it? And I think it was interesting, both him and Nkunku had been playing every game in pre-season, like starting every game under Maresca, which felt deliberate to me in terms of like, right guys, we're going to make sure we get lots of minutes in your legs and really try and get you back up to speed. Kind of Lavia the same, actually. It'd be interesting to see the full load of minutes, but I feel like those three were right up the top, and that felt deliberate, and it felt like he was getting through it okay. but he pulled up in training, and it's just such a shame. Such a shame. I think a couple of things worth adding to that is, one, we are absolutely blessed, aren't we, to have Malo Gusto as a backup, as we saw last season. He is absolutely top class, and it's obviously Reece would have missed the first 3 games of the Premier League season anyway with his suspension, so the actual impact on the team hopefully won't be too significant. And as we said, we've got a great replacement who comes straight in, so let's see how that shakes out in terms of how they play out with Gusto inverting into the centre midfield or into a right centre back, or maybe there'll be a wild card and we'll see someone else out there. So yeah, that's the first thing. And the other thing I just wanted to say, because for those who are on social media, it really baffles me this has become a thing in the last few years, and it's just a bit of a sad example and indictment of social media, I think, is the amount of comments that are like blaming Reece and having a go at him and saying, "Oh, I've had enough of you. This is, beyond." And you saw a lot with players last season. Chilwell and Reece probably got the brunt of it, being the captain and vice captain. But I don't know when that point happened in time where getting injuries became the player's fault. And it's a really kind of modern day thing that just wasn't a thing in the past. And actually, I just feel it just frustrates me, really. There's going to be no one in the world who is more upset about his injury than Reece James. And the idea of piling in with comments, hopefully he doesn't see them, but let's be honest, most players do look at this stuff, so he probably has. But just piling in on him, saying, "Oh, we need to sell you, you're no Chelsea captain," all this sort of nonsense that you get on there. I mean, it just doesn't help him, does it? Like, you want to get support and say, "Look, we're behind you," all that kind of stuff. And again, not to talk about the pitfalls of social media once again, but things like that, it's not needed, is it? So, but yeah, hopefully it comes back strong, and yeah, let's really hope that this isn't another injury like the last few years, because if it is, you start to really worry long term, don't you, about where his role is at the club.
Yes, I just had the Reece James news, and like you, I think it's just really, really sad. It's hopefully it's not anything that's too serious, and he may be back on the field quicker than we think. But hamstrings are hamstrings, and they can be anything from 6 weeks to 3 months. It's one of those problems that you just don't really fully know. The player will know, and the moment he goes for a burst run, that's when you're going to find out. And I think if he's being held back by that, in pre-season, was he kind of not pushing himself to the limit? Did he not want to be sprinting and only sort of going at 70%, which is kind of not what you can do in the Premier League against any team, because you'll get found out. So if he's just not fitting it, then I think it's the right thing to shut him down for a little bit and see what goes on with the results and things. So I'm not going to carry on speaking about him as such, just to say that I'm sorry for the guy and I hope he gets back quickly. As for his replacement in Gusto, I think that's where we are very blessed, because that signing at the beginning of last season, or it might have actually been the winter of the season before, he really has been a revelation for us. And the idea that we can just bring this chap in and almost like for like, it doesn't really affect us, is fantastic. And I think at least Maresca has that backup option in Gusto. I hear a lot of people say today, "Oh, who's the backup to Gusto?" Well, football doesn't really work like that in some ways. You can't have 3 world-class right backs at the club. We'll figure it out. If there is a reason why Gusto needs a break or a rest or a breather, then they'll either bring in maybe an academy player, or they will kind of shoot on the formation to fit somebody else. So yeah, don't worry about if Gusto gets injured. It's a bit like saying, what happens if my car breaks down on the way to a game? Well, you'll get out, you'll get an Uber to the nearest train station, and you'll get the train to Stamford Bridge. You'll always figure out an option. There's always a solution. But yeah, I'm really pleased that Gusto can get some consistent minutes now. At least it kind of means we're not going to be chopping and changing in that area for the foreseeable future. Obviously, you sit with the Inter Milan game is being played today, so all eyes on him. Let's make sure we can keep him fit and healthy, and hopefully he doesn't play the full 90, so we can at least come and have a rest before the Man City game next week. But yeah, we're truly blessed with having him. and he doesn't weaken us one bit. He keeps us solid on that side. He adds something different to Reece, I think, sometimes too. It's nice to have a kind of second opinion almost on what a different player would do, and Gusto is certainly that. He's got his own mind. He plays his own way. He doesn't try to be Reece James. He plays just like Malo Gusto, which is kind of what you want players to be, because when they try and be someone they're not, that's when they make mistakes. And I think Gusto is, as we know, he's such a solid player. Get someone down the wing. He's probably going to invert this year a little bit more, so he might not do so much of that, but he's just so solid in the tackle. He's good with his passing, has a good sort of range of passing too. So yeah, it's not a disaster for Chelsea. And I think that's the biggest thing we need to kind of take out of it. Any sort of plus points is that we've got a ready-made replacement in Gusto, and hopefully he can stay fit and keep us healthy on that right-hand side.
So we finish, as always, with the question, and I'm going to take it this week, and it's going to be the same question that Joe answered last week, which was, what is our favourite Chelsea goal ever? Joe gave both an emotional reaction to a goal and also one for pure skill. If you do want to send us a question in the future, you can now email us at hello@1905podcast.com, and you can also get in touch via our Instagram, which is 1905podcast. So I'm going to start with the emotional reaction to a goal. I think my mind naturally took me back to being a kid for this one, really. So this particular game, I would have been 14 years old, I guess, at Wembley, the old Wembley that is, with my dad. And it was 1997. Chelsea hadn't won a trophy for 26 years. So kind of makes you realise that right now, when we're all feeling a bit down on Chelsea after a couple of years without a trophy, or is it 3 years? That, things were a lot worse. So amazing. Chelsea v Middlesbrough, Wembley Stadium, 17th of May. It's one of those dates, actually, that just I always remember. Whenever it comes around to 17th of May, I don't know if any of you are the same, but there's certain dates for games that always just stick in your mind. 19th of May for Munich 2012 being another example, of course, which our podcast got half of its name from. And it was just the most incredible start to a cup final, to any game ever, really. 43 seconds on the clock, and Di Matteo picks the ball up on the halfway line from a pass from Dennis Wise, strolls forward about 20 yards and just unleashes a great strike over Ben Roberts, who is now on the Chelsea books. Actually, he's now part of our goalkeeping team, and just wheels away in the way that you should celebrate a goal like that at Wembley after 43 seconds. Just goes absolutely mental, sprinting like a madman down the pitch. And actually, even saying it now brings goosebumps to us. It was just the most crazy moment. It was such an important game in Chelsea's history, I think. And in the ground, it was just, you almost couldn't believe what you just seen. You're all nervous, been building up to this game for weeks, and after 43 seconds, you're 1-0 up. And I remember jumping around like a madman with my dad in the ground, and just just incredible. And one of the great things, obviously, about it, and we haven't had this in many recent years at Chelsea, let's be honest, is you actually could kind of then enjoy the game. I always feel like when you're behind in a game, like a cup final especially, it's impossible to enjoy it because you're just frustrated and you're desperate for your team to equalise, etc. And even in a lot of games we've had recently at Wembley, or cup finals, or they've been particularly tight affairs, you can't relax. You can't really enjoy it. I'm not saying that any of us were particularly relaxed, but when you are 1-0 up, and it just felt we had that momentum with us, and had a great team obviously at the time, that you could just enjoy the day, enjoy Wembley, enjoy that magical game. And obviously with about 7 minutes to go, Eddie Newton made it 2-0 and we won the cup. So the first trophy in a long, long time. I think it goes down in history for one of the longest celebrations on the pitch ever after a cup final. I think genuinely we were still singing, the players were still there after well over an hour, maybe an hour and a half after the game. And yeah, just one of those days that really sticks out. So that's my choice for number one in terms of the kind of emotional reaction and attachment to a goal. And then the second part, so like a goal for skill and ability. And to be honest, I was tempted to go for an Eden Hazard goal here because there's so many I could pick out. The Liverpool one is probably my favourite of his. But Joe chose Hazard last week, so I thought I'd go for something a bit different. And probably my favourite type of goal is a long ranger, if I'm being honest. Just that kind of screamer from distance. really interesting. I was reading a book about XG recently over the summer, and there's a season on season, the number of long shots being taken is less and less because of the rise of the XG stat and, likelihood to score and all that kind of stuff. It's why you see, so many teams not putting crosses in the box as much anymore and certainly shooting from distance, because obviously the chance to score is so much lower, which I think is a real shame. But in this era, that was not the case. And it's a screamer of a goal, but made even better by the opposition, by the importance of it to a point, but by the camera angle. So most of you, as soon as I say the goal, will be able to picture it going in and having seen the camera angle of it so many times. And it's Michael Essien at home to Arsenal in 2006. 84th minute of the game. Again, I remember being there. We were 1-0 down and we were 51 games unbeaten at that time at Stamford Bridge. So we're on this incredible run. And it just had that feeling at the time of like, oh, this could be how it ends. It was a bit, you couldn't really see us scoring, even though we had that brilliant team. It just had that feel of a game that was fizzling out for us. And then Lampard obviously rolls the ball across to Essien. And he absolutely, it's as sweet a strike as you'll ever likely to see. And it basically swerves from out to in, right in the corner, absolutely unsavable. Preserved that record, ended up drawing the game 1-1, and we ended up then being unbeaten for almost another 2 years at Stamford Bridge. So preserved that incredible record, but was an absolutely incredible goal. His goal against Barcelona is probably even better, if I'm being honest, for pure skill, but that game was too much pain for me with Iniesta and what happened with it. So I have to go with the one that did preserve the winning run. And that is that scream from Essien. We'll put both of them on our Instagram so you can watch them again in all glory. And yeah, thanks again for the question to Steve Key. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.